With all this preseason madness, it's time that somebody cleared things up for you guys. So who's OP and who sucks? We've got those answers for you guys here, and welcome back to another Pro Guides mid-patch update. My name is Zyrene, and I'll be running you guys through 5 updated tier lists as we run through which champion picks are proving to be the strongest solo queue superstars right now. Now, if you're interested in Wild Rift, I do want you guys to know that we've started a Wild Rift channel for it. Make sure to check out that link in the description if you're interested. For our question of the day, what's your favorite mythic item so far? For me, it's going to be Sunfire Aegis or Funfire Wind Cape. It's just too broken, man. I love having that much power and being able to deal that much damage while playing a tank. Everybody else hates it, I kinda like it. Maybe I'll change my mind after some nerfs, but for now, that's where I'm at. Let me know your answers in the comments below. And yes, I know that it's evil to think the way I do. That said, let's run through the tier lists beginning with the top lane. First up, with the new season, we've decided to make some adjustments to the list. We've removed Soraka, Lulu, and Kalista from the top lane tier list for now, as they've essentially grown obsolete as picks. Should they return, they'll also return as picks on the list. Now, we'll mention that this set of changes is going to be a big one. The preseason has been hectic, and the top lane meta, as well as the metas for the other roles, has changed significantly as a result of all the changes to items this preseason. Thus, we'll approach the tier list a bit differently than normal, just running through each tier and letting you guys know which picks have been placed where and why. First up, we've got 2 new OP picks in the top lane. All it took for Darius to get dropped down was a new game to be released. The Juggernaut King has been replaced by Malphite and Kayle, 2 very different characters. Malphite is absolutely insane right now, pulling 18% of bans in high elo and sporting just below a 56% win rate. Sunfire Aegis alongside some aggressive tank itemization make Malphite one of the strongest carries in the entire game. We're not talking about him because he's a tank, we're talking about him because of just how much he does while being nearly unkillable at the same time. With a much more diverse pool of items to choose from, Malphite players can better approach each game, and the new Sunfire Aegis is proving to be a massive upgrade from before, as it not only is stronger than Sunfire Cape, it also provides ability haste for Malphite, which wasn't something he got to access until a bit later into the game before. Kayle received a small buff this patch, but has also benefited heavily from various item changes this patch. Nashor's Tooth, as well as the Riftmaker mythic item, are proving to be extremely powerful on her. Nashor's Tooth went through some changes, making it deal more on-hit damage than before, while Riftmaker provides free Omnivamp for Kayle to work with. As Kayle is a team-fighting champion, the ramp-up damage and true damage conversion also synergize very nicely with her role. Kayle sports similar statistics with a 55% win rate, but a much lower ban rate at 4%. This is still enough, however, as she's still the 8th most played top laner in high elo right now. A carry holding that high of a win rate is absolutely absurd. Next, let's talk about the S tier. The S tier is now composed of Fiora, Jax, Shen, Wukong, Darius, Camille, and Maokai. Wukong and Maokai were moved up, while Darius was moved down from the OP tier. Wukong has benefited heavily from the item changes, as he now has more sustain and damage to work with, while Maokai has also been able to benefit from the power of Sunfire Aegis. The A tier now has 3 new members, Urgot, Akali, and Volibear. Urgot was moved down, as he's just a little weaker comparatively, while Akali has blasted through the rest of the pack and proven to be an effective pick this patch. While her ban rate is obviously split between her mid and top lane play rate, it's still standing strong at 34%. She's not as powerful in the top lane, but it's clear that Akali as a pick is just very good right now. Riftmaker's Omnivamp and true damage conversion work excellently on her. Volibear is doing better this patch as well, but it's still uncertain which mythic item is best for him. Some pros have been finding success with Frostfire Gauntlet and the good old Turbo Chem Tank. He benefits heavily from the utility they provide, and having some burn damage from the Immolate passive is still very nice for him. Hecarim, Rengar, Singed, Garen, and Alawi are the new members in the B tier. All of these guys have been moved down here, and the preseason is proving to be pretty rough for them. Aside from Singed and Hecarim, it's pretty unclear what mythic item is best for these champions. Overall, they've come out a bit weaker when compared to other champions who are benefiting heavily from the overpowered mythic items. With more power on items, if your character isn't able to utilize some items effectively, you'll naturally be weaker as a result. In the C tier, we've got some new faces with Nasus, Vladimir, Tryndamere, Gangplank, and Yasuo. These guys' win rates have plummeted this patch. Nasus is getting bullied out too hard, while Vladimir is much better suited to the mid lane right now because of how much early to mid game power top laners are finding. Tryndamere, Gangplank, and Yasuo are all kind of struggling right now. It seems like the optimal mythic item on them aren't exactly the perfect fits. Right now, players are starting to build Immortal Shield Bow on Yasuo, while Gangplank players have adjusted their build to include a Divine Sunderer instead of a Trinity Force. Nonetheless, it's not looking too hot for these guys, and they might need some buffs as a follow-up to this patch. Next up, let's run through the jungle. So while we usually try to keep the OP tier limited, we'll go ahead and make an exception for this patch. Hopefully Riot can manage to pull the game back into a manageable state, because we've got a lot of OP junglers right now. Namely, they're Hecarim, Graves, Kha'Zix, and Kayn. It's hard to say who's the most OP out of these four, as they all sport extremely high ban rates, exceeding 20% in high elo. At the same time, their win rates are all quite high as well. Kha'Zix in particular has a ban rate of 44% in Platinum and higher. It's clear that he's pretty busted right now. He's one of the few assassins that's actually using Duskblade instead of Eclipse because of how well it synergizes with his kit. Kha'Zix already enjoys the benefit of brief stealth with his ultimate, but Duskblade of Drakthar is a welcome addition to the chaos that he can create. Overall, however, these champions abuse the new items extremely well. They're also some of the most snowball-oriented junglers in the game. We've all seen these champions take over entire games off a single kill. Next, we've got a new champion in the S tier, Amumu. Thus, our S tier is now Amumu, Evelynn, Nunu, and Vi. While this might seem like a shorter list, remember that we just bumped up a few picks into the OP tier. While we expected tanks to be rather weak, some of them have proven to be extremely powerful because of Sunfire Aegis. The damage output is absolutely insane, and with Amumu in particular, we had to debate whether or not to place him into the OP tier. However, compared to the OP picks, he does feel slightly weaker because of his weaker early game. If he manages to push through, however, he easily becomes one of the strongest picks in the game, so if you prefer playing tanks, Amumu might just be the pick you should lean towards this patch. Next up, we've moved Elise and Lilia down to the A tier, and also bumped Skarner, Rammus, and Dr. Mundo up there as well. Elise and Lilia are still powerful picks, but they fall just a bit short of the picks that we've placed above them. Skarner, however, has been seeing an incredible surge in his win rate and pick rate this patch. Turbo Chem Tank is an incredible item for him, and if he was able to produce these results with a higher play rate, he would definitely be S tier. However, with the low sample size of games, it's difficult to confidently place him up so high. One thing is for certain, however, he's a pretty effective pick as the Chem Tank allows you to zoom in and catch any target of his choosing. One very surprising pick in the A tier is Udyr. He's there to stay because of the new mythic item Stridebreaker. It helps him out a ton as it fixes all of his mobility issues, providing a powerful active slow alongside tons of extra movement speed for him. While Rammus and Dr. Mundo were extremely powerful picks at the beginning of this patch, a hotfix has led to them becoming just a tad bit weaker. Fiddlesticks, Rek'Sai, Shyvana, and Warwick have been moved into the B tier this patch as well. Unfortunately, a new set of items haven't played into their favor, and players are still struggling to find optimal item sets for them. As we receive more balance updates and things get rebalanced, we'll likely see them make their return in the future. Right now, however, they are outshone by many other jungler picks and stand as only a little bit above average. Now for the C tier. We have a bunch of new faces, with Ekko, Karthus, thank god, Nocturne, Gragas, Rengar, Ivern, Trundle, and Xin Zhao. These guys have gotten it even worse. With the exception of Ekko, who is absolutely killing it in the mid lane, when pitted against strong junglers, however, Ekko can fall short, and he's much better suited for the mid lane this patch. In the case of the other picks, however, they just feel too weak comparatively, and are struggling when the other junglers do so much and have a lot more agency over their games. Finally, we've moved Taliyah, Sett, and Morgana into the D tier. Their win rates have plummeted significantly in the jungle. While these picks were rather rare, they did manage to find a decent amount of success when picked under the right circumstances. Amid the preseason chaos, however, it appears that they've become very weak picks and are almost never optimal right now. Taliyah in particular is in a pretty bad spot as her win rate sits just below 40% overall, with very few games played on her. Overall, the general trend is that characters that utilized the jungle items last season extremely well, like Taliyah, who liked Runic Echoes, or Sett, who abused Cinderhulk, are in a worse place. In contrast, champions who scale very hard with each item purchase have benefited heavily. For example, Graves has essentially freed up an extra slot for an extra item and can thus hit an even stronger peak than before. That'll cover the jungle, so next up, let's run through the mid lane. In the mid lane, we've also got a very fat list of OP picks. They're all just that good, and we had to mention them all. The OP picks in the mid lane are Zed, Viktor, Akali, and Fizz. The assassins kind of speak for themselves. They all have their various builds, but their incredible burst damage and ability to solo kill their enemies allows them to snowball extremely hard. Finishing up your mythic item before your opponent is a gigantic power spike, and you can absolutely abuse your opponents if you're able to do so. Usually, assassins are the ones picking up solo kills, and thus generating that income lead to hitting those power spikes faster. Off this list, the exception is Viktor. He's basically had his shackles released as he lost his Hex Core this patch. He has an extra slot for an item now, and thus is able to reach his his maximum potential. This, alongside excellent synergy with the new items, has led to a drastic increase in Victor's win rate this patch. Following up, we've got Echo, Diana, Annie, Katarina, Malzahar, Galio, and Malphite in the S tier. Malphite is a new addition, and he made the jump all the way from D tier up to S tier this patch. Like we mentioned in the top lane section, Malphite is ridiculously powerful right now because of the insane amount he deals while being unkillable. Malphite's ultimate allows him to jump into the fray and take out half the health of all the enemies he catches with it. Afterwards, he stands there menacingly, burning them down rather quickly with Sunfire Aegis. Malzahar is the other new addition, and because of his synergy with the new items, namely Liandry's is just too good. I can't even express it in words. It's absolutely disgusting what he can do with it. There's also the addition of Demonic Embrace as well, and overall this new item set just makes Malzahar super strong once he manages to get enough gold in his pocket. In the A tier, we have the addition of Yone, Yasuo, and Vladimir. Crit itemization is mostly for marksmen, however both Yone and Yasuo are still seeing a ton of play. Immortal Shield Bow is proving to be the item of choice for both of them, but they're still not putting out the same results as they did last season. Perhaps if the item gets buffed for melee champions, these two might be able to return to their former glory alongside some other potential melee carries like Tryndamere, Gangplank, or even Master Yi. Vladimir is doing alright. Well, I mean objectively speaking. He's doing above average, but he's not the same monster he was during Season 10. Once again, thank God. Overall, we can make a blanket statement about these guys. They have had a bit of trouble getting into the groove, but if you're able to pick up your items and scale up, they're definitely incredibly powerful picks. It just feels like other champions are a bit more reliable in comparison. The B tier features some new faces as well. Talon, Sylas, Pantheon, and Pyke have been moved there. Talon got the short end of the stick unfortunately. Tiamat Rush was great on him last season. He had so much wave clear and it was beautiful. However, Tiamat has been readjusted, and rushing it also delays your mythic item power spike. Thus, it's not nearly as effective of a purchase as before, and Talon's early game has suffered significantly as a result. Without a Tiamat purchase, Talon has a harder time clearing waves and proceeding with his game plan to kill everyone, except, but sometimes including, his lane opponent. In harder matchups, this is especially detrimental, because the presence of strong wave clear last patch meant that he could clear waves and essentially refuse to interact with his opponent. Pyke has also been seeing less play, and honestly the niche picks in this patch seem a bit weaker overall. This is likely because of the lack of optimization thus far. It's only the first patch after all. Kassadin, Karthus, Veigar, Anivia, Twisted Fate, Ryze, and Aurelia are the new members in the C tier. Their win rates have dropped significantly this patch for various reasons. F's in the chat for the loss of Rod of Ages, boys. Kassadin, Anivia, and Twisted Fate players are pretty sad right now, as they've lost an extremely important part of their build. Without any big adjustments, there were bound to be some champions that were going to get the short end of the stick. While we are letting you guys know who's strong and who's not, these are still testing stages for Riot, and we'll hopefully see compensation buffs for most champions that need them very soon. That'll be it for the mid lane, so let's hop into the bottom lane next. First up, we removed Syndra from the bot lane tier list. Low play rate, low win rate, you guys get the idea. So first up, let's run through these OP picks. Unsurprisingly, Samira is still broken, but she's got two new buddies up there with her. The first is Jhin, who's finding a ton of success recently. His 53% win rate and top pick rate have led us to conclude that he is busted. Sure, he's not banned a lot, but because he's not banned a lot, players have the chance to lock him in game after game. He currently holds the spot as the most played marksman in both high elo and overall play. It's no secret that he's strong, and most of you guys were probably aware of this even before watching this video. The reason is, he loves lethality builds. So don't go with the normal build, instead look up a guide and find that lethality one. Vayne is up next as her ban rates have climbed tremendously this patch. She sits at around an 11% ban rate in high elo, meaning that even players who have traditionally been pretty good at dealing with her think that she's problematic. Kraken Slayer basically adds an extra layer to Vayne's W. It's true damage for days, and with it, Vayne cuts through tanks and squishies alike. No discrimination here, she'll kill just about anyone, and the adjustment of the new Rageblade builds also really help her out. Our S tier remains otherwise unchanged, quite surprisingly as well. We've got Ashe, Draven, Ezreal, Misfortune, and Caitlyn in here. So let's move on to the A tier. Here we see a new face with Tristana. Tristana is performing exceptionally well when compared to previous patches. The builds pan out nicely for her, as she's able to build a Bloodthirster while also gaining critical strike chance. And Kraken Slayer feels strong on her, as she already has a powerful attack speed steroid on her Q to dip into it more, and she doesn't really need Gale Force because she has her W and resets. Sivir has been moved to the B tier, as she's been underperforming a little bit this patch. All the other marksmen have found new items that have resulted in ridiculous spikes of damage, but in Sivir's case, she's kind of working with scraps. If anything, Sivir has to work to survive and make play after play with her ultimate if she wants to get anything done. Otherwise, with all the extra power and items, she'll naturally get outscaled by her lane opponent. Twitch has been moved down to the C tier, surprisingly. When you manage to get going and hit that mid to late game power spike, you're basically unstoppable as Twitch. However, with all the introduction of mythics, all champions spike significantly harder in the early to mid game. Thus, puts Twitch behind, as he needs a lot of time to get to a point where he can comfortably carry games. His long ramp up time can oftentimes put him too far behind to come back, and thus, we've seen his win rates drop significantly this patch. One thing that I do want to mention in addition here for Twitch though, is he's somebody that I'm going to be monitoring very closely. Some builds have emerged recently that involve building a Nashor's Tooth, things like a Rabadon's Death Cap, and I personally am a fan of a Rat in a Hat. So this AP build may actually take off with him. No troll, it's actually pretty good. That'll cover the bottom lane changes, so let's wrap things up with supports. Alright, so supports have a decent number of changes this patch. First up, let's talk about who's OP. One thing our analysts got right was that Leona and Lulu are definitely the top tier picks this patch. Their ban rates have been climbing, and the bottom lane meta has shifted towards hard engage and what counters it. Leona probably holds the most impressive stat line overall, second most played overall with a 21% ban rate and 52% win rate. There are champions that are banned more, that win more, and one who's picked more. But Leona is a powerful contender in all three fields. Lulu, while her win rate is only a bit above 50%, still merits a ton of picks as well as bans. These two bring a massive amount of utility to the table, and are able to impact their games a lot more than most supports can as a result. In our S tier, we have Thresh, Bard, Morgana, Nami, Janna, Alistar, Brand, Pantheon, and Nautilus. Essentially, like we mentioned, it's engaged supports along with who counters them. The exception is Brand, because he deals enough damage at the moment to merit him as a powerful pick. Thresh comes extremely close to the OP tier, but falls just short when compared to Leona, who provides more reliable and powerful lockdown at the moment. Pantheon and Nautilus have made their returns to the S tier as well. This patch has led to some nice itemization for both of them, and we've actually seen Pantheon's ban rate in high elo climb to 22%. In the case of aggressive supports, Sunfire Aegis has proven to be a powerful mythic option. While supports want to be tankier and also deal more damage, they can opt to build both while still doing their job. These items are a little bit overtuned, and even with some nerfs, they'll prove to be a viable option for melee supports to purchase when they want to act as primary tanks for their team. In the A tier, we now have Blitzcrank and Swain. Blitzcrank dropped a bit this patch because in comparison to the other CC supports, he doesn't feel as durable. The impact that picks like Nautilus and Leona can make, while simultaneously acting as primary frontliners for their team, allows them to influence games more heavily than Blitzcrank can with his hook alone. Swain has creeped up as a power pick as well. Liandry's is an extremely powerful purchase on him, and even with minimal income, Swain can dish out plenty of damage. Next up in the B tier, we now have Soraka, Lux, and Senna. All these picks have dropped down significantly this patch, as they don't have the bulk to survive CC heavy supports such as Leona. While they could previously opt for short trades and slowly work their way through the laning phase, picking them can be rather risky now. Senna's win rate dropped by a whole % this patch, as she too feels much riskier to pick. The final thing worth mentioning is that Karma has dropped into the C tier. While she's a utility support with some disengage built in, she needs to work through multiple short bouts. Right now, the game is more explosive, and kills can result from a single moment. This, and also the fact that Karma can easily get one-shot by more aggressive supports, has led to her struggling quite a bit this patch. That'll conclude our mid-patch update for patch 10.23. Thank you guys so much for watching and supporting our channel. If you want one resource that'll help you guys get better though, I highly suggest checking out our website, ProGuides.com, where we've got courses, coaches, and other materials to help you improve. Have fun on the Summoner's Rift, and I'll see you in our next video.